you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are live. Today is Sunday, October 23rd, 2010. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me is Martin Wagner.
How to do?
We've got a shortened show. I'm going to try and get through the announcements relatively quickly. As a reminder to everybody, the telephone number has changed now that we're in the bigger studio, and that's not me.
Yeah.
It's 512-472-2255 is the new telephone number. There's already people queued up because we start streaming a little beforehand. We are sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. And for more information about the ACA and the ACA's activities, you can visit our website, www.atheist-community.org. And I already did these out of order, so Shelley's back there screaming, what's he doing?
Don't worry
So you can visit the website. In addition to this show, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast, which is back.
And better than ever.
I busted my butt yesterday, and Russell and Dennis and I sat down and did a brand new nonprofits episode, which we stream live, and then afterwards, actually, I posted the gorilla episode that
Right,
you
the
and
one
Gia
I
and
did
Chris
with Hello Gia, Hello Chris.
Hi, and thank you guys. It was awesome. I posted that, and I posted the one we did yesterday, and I posted the interviews that I did at the Texas Free Thought Convention, so you can hear from some of the speakers that are up there. So Nonprofits is back. You can stop bitching. Everything's good now.
Yeah, you get like 3 shows in one go. So,
Yeah, I mean, how could you ask for anything
like
more?
Christmas in October for atheists.
So, in addition to finding out about the ACA's events like the happy hour and the lecture series
Website.
and all these other things at the website, currently at the website you'll find the 2010 ACA's Voters Guide, which we sent out to every candidate running in every election that Texans will vote on in the upcoming elections. The early voting has actually already started. This is a nonpartisan list of 24 issues that that the candidates were asked to rate their degree of agreeal or disagreeal, which just sounds wrong.
Agreement or disagreement.
That's why it sounds wrong.
Agreeal.
Agreeal. That's why it sounds wrong.
That agreeal.
I'm an idiot. So anyway, it's posted up there for everybody.
We are
to look
all
at.
in agreeal.
And by the way, we're hoping that this voter, the voters guide is useful for everybody because there are issues on there, covering everything, lots of church-state separation things. And if you are looking for a specific answer, whether you're looking for somebody who is a strong supporter of church-state separation, or if you're looking for somebody who wants to abolish church-state separation and destroy, the founding principles of our government, you'll find those answers there too.
Indeed.
So please check that out. And the last announcement, dinner after the show, or the last of the regular announcements. After the show's over, we get together and go to dinner at Threadgill's at 301 West Riverside Drive. We're on the air till 5:30, which means we'll be down there around 6 or so. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come to that or any of our other events. You do not have to be a member to attend. And the last kind of announcement thingy is specific to me. For people who've been asking about when am I actually going to go get in a formal debate with somebody, well, it's actually happening November 16th, UMBC, that's University of Maryland, Baltimore County. The lectures or the debate is on the source of human morality. It's an interfaith debate sponsored by a couple groups on campus, and it'll be at the UMBC University Center ballroom. So at 7 o'clock on November 16th.
As you get more details about that, you could probably put it on the blog and the website and all the rest of it.
I may not get any more details other than date and time.
Oh, then it's
topic.
happening. Oh, okay.
But
who are you debating against? Do you know your opponent?
yes, he's an Orthodox priest, and I've forgotten the name. So yeah, I'll have more information at some point in the future. But
Okay.
all right.
Well, there it is.
How are you?
I am well.
Really?
Yourself? Yes, I am.
Did you bring a subject to talk about for 20 or 30 minutes of the show?
Surprisingly, no, because they've cut our time. So I just let's just duke it out with callers.
We're going to calls.
How about that?
Good
What do you
deal.
think? Yeah.
Is it Venaris?
Yes, this is C.
How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Just fine.
First I got to say I love you guys' show. I'm a recent atheist myself, former Christian, former Muslim, both as a matter of fact. I wish you guys I could see your show live in Mississippi, but, if there's some hardcore Christians down here, they'd probably go to the studio with pitches and, torches and pitchforks to the studio and try to stop it, so I wouldn't.
We'll just plant Frank in their path, and
And thanks for mentioning the studio. I have to put this reminder out real quick, and that is that now that we moved to the big studio, not only have things changed, including the telephone number, but there's room for actually people to come down to the studio and watch the show live. So if you're in the Austin area and want to do that, you can go to channelaustin.org for
lots
more information.
of room.
Go ahead with your question, Bernard. Sorry.
Okay. In your past shows, I know y'all mentioned briefly about the Christian story of Jesus and how it possibly could have been influenced by earlier religions. I know you mentioned the Zeitgeist movie or whatever.
I mentioned Zeitgeist as an abomination that's a big steaming pile of crap, but yeah.
Okay, well, do you guys agree that, that a lot of early religions have stories of the sons of God helping mankind and, they're being born by pure virgin women and miracle workers, the prophets being miracle workers or what have you?
Right.
You guys kind of agree with that as well, possibly?
Well, we have examples of lots of other myths that share common elements.
Okay. Now, I get into it with a lot of Christians down here because I'm an atheist myself, and then I tell them, well, this is one of the smaller reasons why I just don't buy into the whole Jesus being the Son of God thing. And then they say, well, you don't have to worry about that because this is actually the work of the devil. Because the devil had some foresight, and he saw the events that was going to happen of Jesus' life, and he encouraged people that came before Jesus to write down these stories. And what has happened is he said he had some kind of master plan to where, after Jesus died, he was going to come back and say, yeah, you guys, I know you didn't see Jesus, but don't worry, it's a mythology because, look, it's, copied from earlier mythologies and things of that nature. So,
yeah.
Well, my question would be, and I know you guys, I was listening to you talking with an individual about the devil, and of course, like me, you see him as a...
Here's what I ask Christians who hit me with that one or something similar to that. I say, is the devil more powerful than God?
Okay.
Inevitably, they say no. In which case I respond, well, then how can anything the devil wants to do possibly inconvenience or upset any of God's plans? How can the devil's master plan in any way supersede or thwart God's plan? I mean, God is all-powerful. Christians insist that the devil is somehow is not all-powerful in the way God is, but yet somehow the devil is still able to inconvenience and disconcert God's plans and thwart God's plans and essentially be a nuisance and a menace to God, even though he's not as powerful. This is one of those situations where omnipotence, suddenly the definition changes when it becomes, the real definition of it becomes inconvenient. Omnipotence trumps non-omnipotence at all times. So if the devil isn't as powerful as God, then nothing the devil could do could possibly bother God, could possibly impact what God wants. And so to say, oh, well, the devil has a plan and he screws up things for God.
Right.
Well, then either God is not all-powerful, in which case, why are you bothering to worship him? Or you've just revealed a massive logical fustercluck in your belief system.
Although, in the interest of preparing you as best possible, it's very likely that depending on who you're talking to, they're not going to find Martin's response daunting at all, because the particular example they're talking about is Satan's going around doing things, and it's not messing with God's plan, it's messing with individuals' ability to perceive the truth. And I would say that you can still use the same thing, that obviously there's some problem with this God, and his ability to communicate the truth to people. And then they'll come back and say, well, no, that's you're willful, whatever. I've seen this used for a number of things. Actually, it was in the movie The God Who Wasn't There. I think it's Brian Fleming's movie. Talked about the devil planting other mythologies that would turn out to be similar to the Jesus story in order to confuse people. And now you've also got people running around saying that the devil's been running around since the beginning of time burying dinosaur bones so that we would find them in order to confuse people and lead them to evolution. I'd like to know where their evidence for that is and why this isn't just some kind of ad hoc, explanation, which, by the way, if you don't want to use ad hoc, you can just tell them that they're pulling it out of their butt, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're looking at this, and you've pointed out a potentially legitimate problem with what they're saying, and they are inventing out of whole cloth a response. You can do that ad nauseum. If you weren't buying the devil did this to confuse you thing, there's another ad hoc explanation that they can come up with afterwards, and eventually it will trickle down to you got a hard
they're just
heart,
making stuff
you
up,
just don't want to believe it, you want to be sinful, whatever. It's one of the reasons why, if you're going to have conversations like this, you need to get people to define their terms ahead of time, explain what they believe and why, and what sort of evidence they're likely to accept. Because if you begin and they're not going to accept logical arguments, and they're not going to accept scientifically verifiable facts, you are wasting your time. If they're that entrenched, there's unlikely to be anything you could ever say that could convince them. And you should also take the effort to point out that you're not going to accept pull it out of your butt explanations. You want actual evidence. If in fact the devil was going around creating these mythologies in order to confuse people later, what is their evidence to support that claim?
Right, right. And usually their counter argument is something to the effect of, in the book of Job, they say, well, God sometimes allows the devil to do crazy stuff like that because it's some kind of test or something like that,
Yeah,
usually
and
that's their counter argument.
Why would any God do that?
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of game is this guy playing?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
exactly.
I'll let you completely destroy this guy's life just to see what he does. Shouldn't he already know what he's going to do? I mean, that's where you can get back into the omnipotence and omniscience of their God thing.
I mean, this whole thing of, the devil gets to mess with people's minds and confuse them. He gets to bury dinosaur bones. He gets to do this. He gets to do that. If God's omniscient, then he knows in advance every instance of the devil doing this. He knows the names of every individual whose minds the devil is going to be out there confusing. So he is allowing this to happen, just as he knew in advance Eve was going to eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge, and yet he went ahead and allowed it to happen. So either evil was part of God's plan all along.
Which it was.
In which case you have to wonder, well, why he creates this universe and then immediately just overcomplicates everything. Whatever was the point?
You'll actually find Christians who will flatly admit that, in fact, not only does God do things like what he purportedly does with Job, but that he's given the devil kind of reign over the earth, and that's because that's the only proper way to test us. And I would say that not only does this make their God particularly immoral and a bit of a dick, by establishing this system that it couldn't possibly be fair. He's allowing us to be pitted against some sort of supernatural being who has, while not all powerful, has lots and lots of power. How can you possibly hold people responsible for failing to successfully do battle with a being that can supposedly trick your senses? Sure. The very criteria that we use to establish what's real and what's not real.
Yeah. Right. It's kind of like that, God is the devil's pimp, when he sets up like a prostitution and affects us, and then, he expects us, I don't know, that's how it seems kind of like to me.
Yeah, and the whole...
100%, what I'm saying? It'd be a pretty immoral God. And I saw another one of your clips, and I just tell Christians, I was like, okay, once you read the Bible and you see all these things that God are doing, put yourself in your shoes, and if you had the power of God and you was almighty and all-loving, which I don't see how you could be almighty, all-loving, and all these alls at the same time. It's kind of impossible. But, put yourself in God's shoes and see if you could come up with an alternative explanation. If you can come up with something better, then, you're better than God. You should
Can you come up with a better system? I mean, I could come up with a better system in a drug-induced coma than what they're purporting. But on that note, we got
You've done that many times.
Yes. We got lots of calls in little time, so thanks a lot for calling.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, keep up y'all good work.
Cheers.
Take care.
We've got Ed in Toronto. How are you?
Hi. This is like basically tag, except I went right down to the point, okay? So it's really fast, okay?
Okay.
There were concepts before us. Concepts need a mind. That mind is God.
Prove that there were concepts before us.
An example would be the number 4. So, for example, a 4-leaf clover would have existed before there were any brains on Earth.
No. You're confusing the map for the place. The clover existed. The quantity that we identify as 4 to mark those petals didn't exist until there was a mind to invent that concept.
But there would have been 4 petals on that clover.
Exactly, but the concept for had no meaning and didn't exist. I mean, you're confused. Like I said, you're confusing the map for the place. You can't say that just because absent a mind, a 4-leaf clover will continue to exist, but there will be no concept of 4 without a mind. And so,
so with these logical absolutes, what you're saying are, he says that because we have a concept of them, that means they are the concept, but that's the mistake he made?
he made a lot of mistakes, and I definitely don't have time to go through them.
Have you guys ever listened to his show on YouTube and what he does with people? Like, his show is like the antithesis of your show, and he has callers in, atheist callers, who are really well-reasoned. And you should check it out, because he does, it's like you guys in a dark mirror, right? Because he actually does conversations with them with these really tortuous, what do you call them, fallacies, right?
Yeah, I saw a transcript of one he recently did with an evolutionary biologist,
right?
Which was painful.
And the part of the point that that Matt's making is, it gets back to that whole Zen concept of if a tree falls in an empty forest, does it make a sound, right? Well, the whole it's a physical thing can exist, but if there are no minds around to observe it and then attach concepts to it for the purpose of understanding it, then all you have is the physical thing. Physical things and the concepts by which we understand them are not the same thing. They're related.
Exactly.
So in a sense, you would have a 4-leaf clover, but without a brain around to look at it and go, that's a clover and it has 4 leaves, then you just have the physical object unobserved.
So, not only that, but
and
it
may I
has
ask you guys
quattro
quickly,
leaves.
do you think Matt's actually believes his tag thing?
Yes, I do. I think he is. There are some people who are so seriously deluded, and particularly some intelligent people are really good at reinforcing those delusions that they believe for bad reasons. So, for example, after our 45-minute debate on tag, where we had this major disagreement, he goes back.
Matt, man, you let him actually, sometimes you're really effective and you really take them down, and then sometimes you let people go around in circles with you for 45 minutes,
Sure.
You actually kind of let him almost make a tie out of that one.
He didn't make a tie. He went back to his website and changed the argument based on the feedback that I'd given him to try to correct a mistake that he didn't understand. And in the process of trying to correct it, he made the argument even more wrong, if that's possible.
And he won't admit that he actually did that.
And then he went around claiming victory when at the end of our conversation, when he asked whether
God was
true
conceptual.
Yes.
I think what Ed's trying to say is that you might have given him the wiggle room to be that dishonest in response to the argument, but that's debatable. I would say that, and when Matt says that the other Matt is deluded, he's not. That doesn't necessarily mean, because we've had a few viewers ask us to be a little bit clearer on our terms here. Doesn't mean he's an idiot or a moron, right? I mean, I wouldn't put Matt Slick on the same.
He's an idiot and a moron on this particular subject.
He's dishonest in that
not
he does
in
not.
Total.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
I'm saying he's not at the same sort of subterranean intellectual level of Ray Comfort, for example.
Oh yes, he is.
He's a smart. But he's just as dishonest.
Yes.
In the way he argues.
Yeah, and by the way, the kind of
Ray would not have the brain power to come up with something like tag in the first place. He's down still.
Well, neither
he's still
did
down
Slick.
there with.
That's the problem.
He came up with it, but
No,
he did not know how to. He did not understand the fallacies that were ingrained in it.
He didn't come up.
Matt Slick went to post-secondary education, though.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, and so he's
When Ray
an
is still
educated
playing
idiot on
Ray's
those
still playing
subjects.
with blocks. That was my whole point. Kind of. Yeah.
Okay, but here's a further question. I mean, I went to talkorigins.org to see what, because they actually do have, for example, hominid skulls lined up, and I actually wonder, what kind of cognitive dissonance people have to have, because if you actually, in the year 2010, when people have an internet connection, it takes a special sort of compartmentalization of the brain to actually go to Talk Origin and see, and to think, okay, that's some sort of hoax that someone made those skulls up.
Well, what ends up happening with people like, for example, Ken Ham or Ken Hovind or whatever, that you'll line them all up and they'll go, yep, ape, human. The funny thing is, though, that if you get different...
monkey, human. That's another thing they don't get.
Can I ask you a question?
Well,
These people deny evolution.
Hang on.
Sorry.
The important thing is that each of them will draw that line in a different place, which makes the case perfectly.
Okay, but what
So
I want
last
to say
question.
is, do these people ever go to the museum and look at the dinosaurs and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
They actually lead field trips to the museum where they pass out bad information. And then they go and create their own museum.
Yeah.
Because the museum, you go there and it's all right there, right? I mean, it's all there. And sometimes Richard Dawkins does interviews with creationists and they deny evolution, but Dawkins says, well, do you want to go to a museum with me? And they say no. But Dawkins is doing a bad job because he should go around with an actual binder with him filled with fossils, because they always say no transitional forms, and then he says no, but he never actually shows them. Like, he needs to come around with an actual binder full of transitional forms and show them that.
No, Richard Dawkins does not need to travel around with a bucket full of transitional fossils. He's not going to convince anybody by that. These people aren't convinced by that, and they're not.
But convince viewers. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, I'm just trying to say it seems like if you can't beat them, if you let them make it a tie, then you're doing a bad job. That's all I'm saying. You know.
I think anybody who thinks that thing ended up a tie didn't understand what was going on.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Anyway, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
You are mistakenly thinking that what creationists really are after is the facts about evolution. No creationist really wants to understand how evolution actually works. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shut the whole momentum down there.
No, I was actually reading for the next call. We've got John in London.
Okay, no. John?
Am I on there?
You are.
Yes, hi. Is this John?
Hi, I'm John Smith, also known as Thunderboot. Do you remember me, Matt?
No, sorry.
We talked almost a year ago, and you hung up on me and called me a buffoon or a prank caller.
Let me clarify this real quick. Like for a minute ago when I was talking about Matt Slick and how he's an idiot on that particular subject, if I end up calling somebody an idiot or moron, I mean, first of all, it's not the first line of attack, but it applies to the specific context there. I'm not summing up somebody's entire character. There are plenty of areas where I'm an idiot or moron, as is evidenced by the language issue that I had at the top of the show about agreel. I'm an idiot there, and was clearly. There may be some possibility here that you suffer a similar fate today, because according to this, you're claiming that Mark 16:17 proves Christianity.
Yes, I have proof of Christianity is accurate and correct, and I have proof of that the atheists are in fact immoral.
Okay. Really? Bring it.
Yes, so I would like to start with the proof that atheists are immoral. Would you agree with statistics can serve as proof?
No.
No.
You can't?
No. Because you can get statistics essentially to prove any point you like, right? I mean, one political party will take a poll saying 90% of people agree with our views, and an opposing political party will take a poll.
80% of the people think they're above average.
No.
You don't get, I mean, you can use statistics.
This kind of statistics. In the UK prison population, recent studies have shown that 85% are atheists, approximately 85%.
Okay, now hang on. First of all, we'd need to know where you got that study from, what the methodology was, and how that compares to the average, how many atheists are in the population, because it's inverted here with U.S. statistics in that atheists are significantly underrepresented in the prison population of the United States. So that's the thing. I don't know what you're going to...
Yeah, I mean, the general U.S. population...
The Jews fill around with the proof, so they only show you what they want the proof to be. It's not real. The reality shows that the atheists are far more immoral than...
what reality are you living in, right? Because, it's...
The real world.
Well, because, see, in the real world I live in, it wasn't atheists who crashed airplanes into skyscrapers. It's not atheists who have been putting on robes and screwing little boys in the ass. It's not atheists who've been doing that sort of thing. It's not atheists in Central Africa. It's not atheists in the Sudan who've been killing other atheists. It's Muslims and Christians.
Just let him go.
Catholics, let him go. So you're living in this little selective reality that you have constructed in your mind, but
let him go.
John,
you present a statistic from out of nowhere saying 85% of prisoners in the UK are atheists. Okay, so what?
Yeah,
and you've also said that Catholics have a distorted view.
They are immoral.
Why? First of all, you could be put in prison for Example, smoking marijuana, which while it's illegal, I don't necessarily think it's immoral. So there's another flaw in your hypothesis.
It's very immoral to smoke pot.
Really? How do you know?
Yes.
How do you know? How do you know it's immoral? What's immoral about smoking pot? Any more than how is
so.
God told you.
God told you?
Yes.
So do you hear an audible voice, or you just get a funny feeling?
Yeah.
Every time I pray to God,
Do you get a little
I hear
tingle down there?
His voice, yes, and that's how
you hear
I
an audible,
go about living my life.
You actually hear an audible voice
In your head.
Yes, don't all Christians.
Okay, I take it back. You're not a buffoon.
You're insane.
You're insane, and you need to go get some treatment.
Yeah, you're mentally ill because when you talk to God, it's called prayer, and when God talks back to you, it's usually called schizophrenia.
It doesn't mean that I'm ill.
You're right. I'm not saying it just because I disagree with you. I'm saying it because by the definition,
I can say that you are ill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you deny the you reject the existence of God.
I think this is a fake call. I think you are just, I don't think you're real. I think you're just calling to make stuff up so you can hear yourself talk in the air. I don't think for a second, because you haven't gotten anywhere near Mark 16. And by the way, how could you?
I could get to that point if you let me.
Well, I'm not going to let you. I have a much shorter show and a lot of people calling, and there is no way that a verse in the Bible could prove that Christianity is true. If you don't understand that, go Google circular reasoning.
Because
hang on.
It says
go
that the
Google.
blessed will survive deadly poisons.
Yes.
And I know the blessed ones that survive deadly poisons.
Okay, fine. Let me finish. First of all, go Google circular reasoning. Second of all, you should look because Mark 16, 9 through 20 isn't in the oldest and best manuscripts of Mark. It's generally considered to be a forgery. And if you have evidence of people being able to handle snakes without dying and drink poison and whatever else, they can win $1 million prize from the James Randi Educational Foundation for demonstrating supernatural prowess. But in any case, even if they can, it doesn't prove that the cause of their ability to drink those poisons and not die is God or Christianity. Because in that case, you would have a correlation and not a causation. Bye. Way too short of a show to put up with crap like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the minute you admit that you hear voices in your head, you're pretty much done here. Yeah.
So we've got Kyle in Abilene. How are you?
You need a doctor, not us. Kyle?
Hey guys, doing good. Thanks for taking my call on the show.
Sure.
I just got a quick question. I'll be succinct and I'll take the answer off the air.
Okay.
How do the prominent apologists defend the contradiction of the omni attributes of God? I've heard a few, and I kind of get lost when they try to explain it. I was wondering if you could kind of make it a little coherent for me.
You mean how omniscience and omnipotence contradict one another, that sort of thing?
How the prominent theologians, in order to get around the contradictions, redefine the terms such that God has all power that is logically possible, that is not contradictory. So they redefine the terms in that way, which actually doesn't eliminate all the possibilities once you start putting them together, but it does eliminate one little issue. That's about it.
But then what you can always then at that point just kind of nail them for goalpost shifting when they do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, when I said he was omnipotent, I just meant he was, like really, really strong. It's
Otherwise,
Corey in Hernando.
Hey guys,
how you doing?
Really big fan of the show.
Thanks.
I just wanted to talk about just like crazy conspiracy theories, like the government made AIDS or something like that.
Sure.
And then I want you to tell me how much of an idiot I am for believing in 911 truth.
Oh, you're a 911 truther?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the basis by which you think that those claims are true?
I don't believe, I question both sides, but I believe it's probable because how could the buildings fall without, how could the building collapse on itself with just the airplane going into it? I never think
So basically you don't understand it, so therefore you don't buy it. That is the very definition of argument from ignorance or argument from incredulity. I don't know what first of all, none of this has anything to do with atheism or any of the things that we would discuss on the show.
It has to do with skepticism.
It has to do with skepticism. We've pointed people to, for example, debunking911.com and other things before. But at this point, I have absolutely no interest in the subject. And people will call and write and say, well, I just don't believe the quote-unquote official story. Okay. Fine. You're entitled.
Okay.
You're either going to believe or not believe whatever your conscience dictates based on the evidence. Until if your point is to try to convince other people of a conspiracy, then you actually need to present the evidence. In which case, let's evaluate it.
I don't have any evidence. I'm just skeptical of all sides.
Well, that's not I'm skeptical of all sides. That's not skepticism. That's cynicism. Skepticism holds that you do not believe something or accept something until there's sufficient evidence. Now, you may be appropriately skeptical and just you don't have the requisite understanding to be able to assess the evidence and come to a conclusion. But in that case, you're not a conspiracy theorist. You're just undecided.
Yeah. And if that's all you're doing, if you're honest enough to admit, well, I just don't have enough facts at hand to form an opinion one way or another, you should at least say that, and you shouldn't identify, because you'll give people the wrong impression of yourself by saying, oh, well, I kind of believe 9/11 truth claim. Well, because that's an entirely different, kettle of fish right there. There are structural engineers out there who have addressed some of the truther claims, and they'll explain how, yes, indeed, fire can melt steel. But until you have all the facts at hand, the wise thing to do, the properly skeptical thing to do, is not declare yourself to have committed one way or another. So I would just say, look at both sides and get that information from actual scientists and engineers and what have you who have addressed some of the claims of the 9/11 truth movement and really try to understand them. Otherwise, yeah. But thanks. But that's a skepticism question, not specifically an atheism question.
Yeah, and the thing about it that baffles me is granted, Russell and I have been hard on conspiracy theorists in the past, and in particular, truthers. But if you go back, none of us were sitting here saying we support the quote-unquote official story, and it's absolutely correct. All we were doing in any of those cases was saying, you're making a statement about what actually happened that you're not providing evidentiary support for, and we think that that's wrong. You're certainly not going to convince us. But.
And we have, you can go ahead. We have heard from people who are 9/11 truthers who take the view that the official story should be denied or should be viewed with skepticism simply because it is the official story.
Yeah.
But that is an irrational basis to be a believer in the conspiracy theory version of events of that day. It does not follow that simply because something is the official story, it must be untrue. It must be a cover-up.
Yeah.
So
as a reminder, the telephone number has changed. It's 512-472-2255. It's at the bottom of the screen. And after the show's over today, we'll be going to dinner, as normal, at Threadgill's, 301 West Riverside Drive. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person in the Austin area is welcome to come down and have dinner, drinks, or whatever. And that's true for most of our other events as well.
May I bring something up really quickly?
Certainly.
Because we have had some emails from actually a few of our viewers about this, and so I think they make a good point. When we tell any of our callers that what you're doing is making an argument from ignorance, we're not saying you're stupid, you're ignorant. The argument from ignorance defines a specific logical fallacy, which is that because we do not have all of the facts, because we are ignorant of all of the facts, because we don't know the real answer, therefore, whatever I choose to believe, whether it's God or a conspiracy or this, that, or the other, is the logical fallback position. That's fallacious thinking, and that's what the argument from ignorance says. It's like two people are walking around and they see this strange little dot in the sky, and one guy says, what is that? And the other guy says, I have no idea what that is. And he says, oh, well, because you don't know what that is, it must be an alien spaceship. It must be a UFO from the Andromeda Galaxy.
Yeah,
because you don't really know what it is is logical to assume that that's what it is, because that's what I want to believe. That's the argument from ignorance.
And
that's what we mean.
More specifically, argument from ignorance is, you can't prove that this is wrong, therefore I am justified in believing.
Yeah.
And that's where the problems come in.
Okay, so just so everyone knows that's what that means.
Yeah. It isn't the argument from stupidity.
Yeah.
That's like Ray.
Yeah. If you are stupid, we'll say that, but that's a whole different thing.
We have Mohammed in Alexandria. How are you?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, am I on the air?
You are.
From the other end of the world. How are you?
Hi, fine, thanks. How are you?
Fine.
I just wanted to say that I've been watching your show for a long time on YouTube, and I absolutely love it. I can't believe that something like this is real. Like, we need something like this in the Middle East.
Believe it.
I mean, oh my God, how badly do we need something like this here?
Well, I've been
So
to
badly,
Alexandria, but I'm not going to come back over there and set up the show there. You can set up a show there.
Unfortunately, not a few hundred. Can that actually be at all possible? Yeah, I just wanted to say what a great job you guys are doing. But
Well, thank you.
why are all the others who are calling you people who don't seem to do any research whatsoever? I've been looking on YouTube for people with very good arguments for the existence of God, and there indeed are. Well, there's some good arguments. One of my favorite arguments is the argument from reason. Have you heard? Are you familiar with this argument?
Sure. It's also
argument
what
of
we've been
reason.
talking about before, which would be the transcendental argument for the existence of God, which builds up from the fact that there is reason and logical absolutes too. There must have been some author of this.
Well, I believe that reason and rationality and all that can be perfectly explained using evolution,
Sure.
and nothing more than that.
Right.
I mean, more than that, but I can see how evolution can be applied to explain all these things. Anyway, sorry, what I really wanted to talk about was how to try to convince people that atheism is not a bad thing, especially here in Islam, where we hear mosque prayers 5 times a day through gigantic megaphones. And I live in Alexandria, which is actually the birthplace of Christianity. We have such sharp divides here between Muslims and Christians, and one group sometimes attacks the other really brutally. Most of the time, it's Muslims against Christians. But how do I introduce my friends to this kind of secular thinking without them completely thinking that I'm evil?
Okay. I would say that first what you would have to do is ascertain, you'd have to look at the individual you're talking to and ascertain to what degree they are invested in some of the emotional aspects of their religious indoctrination, which essentially teach them. People with these kinds of belief systems are conditioned right off the bat to believe that anyone who does not hold their beliefs, does not share their beliefs, has a different outlook, rejects we heard it from our earlier caller from London. You know, if you don't believe what I believe, you are evil. And so you have to sort of get down to the degree to which the person you're talking to thinks that way. Oh, if you don't believe what I believe, you're evil. Because that right there is an emotional investment. They're looking at you and they're seeing, you know, Exorcist, right? And you have to sort of get them out of that mindset and just say, no, look, I'm a person, I think differently from you, and can we actually talk about ideas here without you constantly seeing, you know, a demon when you look at me, or some sort of devil-influenced, villain. So that is kind of what you have to get around, that there is the whole emotional and sort of gut instinct aspect of religious indoctrination that supersedes and clouds the reasoning faculty. And so this is why you have these horrible religious differences. This is why you have Christians and Muslims and Jews just, you know, going at it like this, because they don't see the other groups as human beings. They see them as, you know, devils and apostates and sinners and people deserving of retribution, and not as other human beings. And so that's what you got to get around first.
Well, in the case of Islam, I don't know how familiar you are with our principles, but Muslims see Jews and Christians as previous receivers of the revelation of that same God that came down to us. So basically what Islam is doing is like, it's saying, oh yeah, all your prophets, the Jew prophets, are all part of our faith. Muhammad was preaching the same message we did. So Islam has this brilliant cover-up to allow itself to monopolize the monotheistic faith, and the Prophet Muhammad is very famous for saying, I am the last prophet. And so, like, I don't know what to tell people. I want to know if I can become an atheist. Why can't other people? For me, it was just a matter of reading and thinking about it. It was just thinking about it, like, why on earth would God choose Arabic of all possible human languages? And why would God choose that time and that place? Do people not think about these things? That the same God that created the galaxies, the Andromeda galaxy, the color purple, and all this, he speaks in rhymes. He speaks Arabic. He has good Arabic spelling. I just don't get it. I don't know how somebody could eat up the possibility that God wrote a book.
And evidently, before that, he was inspiring in Aramaic, and then before that in Hebrew. I think if you spend a lot of time focusing on how you manage to escape, you can find some clues at least to what sort of arguments you might want to make. But this idea that Islam is somehow protected because it manages to fold in these previous two Abrahamic traditions is just kind of nonsense. It's kind of surface theology, in much the same way that you could say Christianity is Judaism 2.0. It is and it isn't, and there's a reason why Jews don't accept that Jesus was God, that he wasn't the Messiah, that he didn't fulfill prophecy. And when people in theological circles actually start talking about this, now you can get somewhere. But meanwhile, you've got Christians charging on ahead saying, oh, no, he fulfilled every single prophecy, every prophecy's come true, this is all good, he's definitely God. The Jews just somehow haven't managed to see it, God love them, and they got their own deal with God, and we'll work that out later. And then the Muslims say, oh, yes, and it was all right, and Jesus was a prophet. It's clear in the New Testament tradition that Jesus wasn't a prophet. He's not portrayed as a prophet. He's portrayed as divine.
As the Son.
As divine, as being God. Now, if Islam comes out and says that Jesus was a prophet, that's the only way that is being accommodating is at like the kindergarten level of theology. It's actually an affront. It should be an affront to Christians who think that Jesus is divine for Muslims to be saying, oh, he's just a prophet. And it should be an affront to Muslims who think he was a prophet for Christians to be saying that Jesus is divine. And I think that's in some areas that's a significant point of contention. And yet, somehow or another, we have people who have managed to adopt either religion out of the other because they think they're somehow connected. It's because people don't seem to know very much about what it is that they believe or why, what it is these religions say.
No, a lot of people have no clue, have zero clue about what their people say. A lot of Muslims have never read the Quran from beginning to end, and even the ones that do, they don't understand it. This kind of Arabic is really old. I mean, the Arabic we speak today, every day, is modern, standardized Arabic and dialects and colloquialisms and all that. The language of the Quran is ancient, absolutely ancient.
And modern students in English classes aren't going to understand Shakespeare without guidance. Mm-hmm. I mean, that we're talking about just how much English has changed in a handful of years.
Exactly, just the idioms and everything. Yeah. It's completely different. And to answer your question about why do people think that they always think that God would speak in their language and have their language? You have to remember, when you think of it in terms of that, to each believer, what God really is an idealized projection of the believer's self-image that they have projected onto the universe as a whole. Then it's easier to understand why they think that way. So so that's another thing that you have to kind of get around. You're dealing with arguments or beliefs in which the believer is personally, emotionally invested much more than intellectually invested. Because, as you point out, if this were a purely intellectual exercise, they would strive to read things, study, understand, what have you. And while some believers do that, even the ones who do that, still have that degree of emotional investment. God ultimately ends up being a guy who always agrees with you. He always agrees with your politics. He agrees with your views on sex and marriage and what food you should eat and not, and exactly, that's the amazing thing about God. He just always agrees with you. He's your best pal. That's that whole idealized self-image projection thing. So there's the emotional connection you've got to work around.
What were the key elements of your transition out of Islam?
Is this Matthew?
Yeah.
I just want to say you're like a celebrity to me. So.
Thanks.
Sorry, what was your question?
I wanted to know what were like the key elements, the points that made you think the most, that helped lead you out of Islam.
Well, I was never really as firm as a believer as they get. I mean, my parents are pretty upper middle class, and they speak French and Arabic and stuff. I just started learning English a while ago, and when I read the Quran in English, I was like, this makes a lot less sense in English than it ever did in Arabic. So I was just thinking about why, if God really did exist and he really did want to reveal himself to human beings, why wouldn't he just reveal himself to every single human being on the planet in all languages, say the exact same thing simultaneously to everybody, and tell them to stop fighting each other forever. Is that too much to, is that ridiculous to imagine? Is that ridiculous to expect that from God?
I think it's a little more effective than a burning bush or a pillar of fire or plagues, and then taking a band of rabble-rousers and giving them the truth to disseminate to everybody else. I mean, I find it absolutely absurd. Hey, I've said it before, the God starts off and I got a man, and oh, well, that wasn't enough. Let's make him, a partner. So now I got a man and a woman, everything's gonna be fine. And then that goes bad. And so all right, kick you guys out of the garden. No more, get to play nice with everybody else. And then it builds up and it goes horribly, horribly wrong again. So now I'm gonna flood the whole earth and just keep this one family alive. Instead of focusing on everybody, it's one family. And surely this one good family will correct things. And then a few hundred years later, they're building a tower. And no, that's not what you can't build a tower to heaven. I didn't want you to do that. So let's confuse them all. And now instead of worrying about everybody on the planet, I'm just going to stick with this one little tribe where everything.
Maybe I'll get it right this time.
Where everything's going to repeatedly go wrong again. I mean, it's this comedy of errors. Where what kind of inept buffoon are we talking about? And in every case, they all think that we've got the truth, and it's our job to disseminate it to everybody else. And interestingly, they're all doing this in competition, and some of them fall by the wayside. Some of them are killed because our God said to kill you and take your stuff, which is about what 80% of the Old Testament's about, or the Tanakh.
Yeah, well, actually, thanks to you guys and watching your show, I did read the Old Testament for the first time. It's not a big thing here in Egypt, but I went out, I got a copy in Arabic, and I read it, and I was like, what's so different about the Quran from all these, not nice things that the Old Testament has to say? And then when I showed it to my friend, they're like, well, yeah, the Old Testament was revealed by God, but it was corrupted and became the New Testament, and nobody could make up their minds. And then they go on to say how the Quran has been unchanged for 1,400 years. Well, it shows.
Yeah.
I mean, it was written by 7th century men for 7th century men. How it's so obvious. I don't know. Like, it's enough to make yourself suspect that maybe you don't know something that they don't. Do they know something I don't? Because it just smells of a rat to me that this book is at all relevant now. I mean, you've obviously heard the violent passages in the Quran about, you shall slay them wherever you find them and such.
Right.
And then Muslim apologists will say, well, you're taking it out of context.
Yeah, because there's two of those passages that are almost the same. So whenever you say it, they'll say that this one's actually talking about a time of war, and one of the passages is and one isn't. I'm curious, as in your experience, I don't know how many atheists you run into.
Zero. This is the first time I ever have a conversation with an atheist ever in my entire life.
Oh, well, then you can't answer the question I was going to ask.
Oh, okay.
But there was curiosity because of this new Pew research that shows that atheists generally tend to know more about religion than religionists. I wondered if that had been your experience in meeting other atheists who had been Muslims, if they knew more. But if we're the first, move. No. I do want to ask.
To come out as an atheist here, really risky. There have been writers and authors in the past who have very subtly tiptoed, and they have been, some have been murdered in their offices. Some of them got stabbed. We have a very famous Nobel Prize-winning author. His name is Naguib Mahfouz. He won the Nobel Literature Prize in 1988 for a book he wrote. It was an allegory about God being the elder of a village, and then all his people were like sheep following him. And people saw that, and then a gang of fundamentalists was waiting down by his house, and they stabbed him in the throat. He survived for another 20 years, but they silenced him. It's impossible to know how many atheists there are here. I'm sure there must be many, but because of the really heavy cultural, social endorsement of this, and like you hear the prayer 5 times a day. If you didn't hear it once, if one of those was missed, you'd look up and say, "Oh my God, something is wrong." It's so tied up in our culture, in our language, in our way of thinking that it's like you're considered it's considered treasonous to be an atheist. Treasonous.
I'm curious about a couple of things. You talked about how the Quran, once you read it in English, made less sense in English than Arabic. But I've heard Muslims actually use that to say that, yes, you need to read it in the original Arabic because it doesn't make sense in English.
Exactly, that's the thing too. That exposes the weakness of what should be an all-powerful, all-knowing being. An all-powerful, all-knowing being
Yeah, he would make
reveal
his
a book in such a difficult
his
language
message would be
that
comprehensible no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, well, in Arabic also, the Arabic language is really different from English, and the way of thinking in it is also really different. But
so I'm wondering during these, granted, I've been to Alexandria and I wasn't, granted, I was a Christian at the time, which would have still made me an apostate, but not nearly as bad. And I wasn't, killed while I was walking the streets, and we drove down to Giza on a bus, et cetera. But you're talking about hearing, the call to prayer 5 times a day and whatever. I know that you can't be out, and I wouldn't encourage you to. I mean, I've said this before, if you're at a risk of loss of life, limb, job, happiness, family, whatever, keep lying, pretending, whatever. But do you find yourself participating? For example, if you're in the office and the call to prayer occurs and everybody hits the mat, do you have to participate in that as well? And if there are people walking around not praying, aren't they like putting a big red flag on themselves?
Not really. I mean, of all the Arab Muslim countries, Egypt is actually, the most secular and most liberal-minded. If this was Saudi Arabia, I wouldn't even be allowed to make this call. No way. If the Saudi Arabia, they have something retarded called the prayer police. They go around, make sure that all shops are closed during prayer. If there's a shop that's open, you're taken downtown and there's a big fat fine you have to pay. They also have something ridiculous called the Ministry of Virtue and Vice. It's about making sure that, we can't see a woman's fingernails and all that such that. No, but in Egypt, no, it's okay. I don't, nobody's forcing me to pray. There's relative freedom from religion here as far as that is concerned. But things like Ramadan, I don't know if you know about that, but we just came out of it about 2 months ago. You fast during all daylight hours, complete abstinence from all like material, worldly pleasures, mainly eating and drinking. And it's hot here in Egypt, it's really, really hot. Even right now, it's 30 degrees and it's the middle of the night. And you can't drink. Like, I want to drink water. I'm not going to just limit myself to drinking water at home. So yes, when I do drink water, people do come up to me and say, what do you think you're doing? Or you're not respecting the culture, the faith, cultural insensitivity and all that.
See, this is you bring up something really compelling, which is that what religion does is it comes up with these concepts of virtue and morality and what have you that really have nothing to do with human well-being or happiness. They just have to do with enforcing this system of rules designed to control people.
It's really crude. I don't get it. It has nothing to do with the human experience. It's like something out of the Victorian era. Seriously.
Or beyond.
It'd be interesting. I don't know if there's a way to do it anonymously or not to see about building an underground network of closeted secular people in the area. So, but anyway, we're running short on time, and I appreciate the call.
Thank you.
And
thanks very much for taking my call.
Sure,
stay in
call
touch
back
with us
anytime.
through,
Let us know what's going on
through email and what have you, if you like.
All right. Bye.
All right, we're coming down to the last few minutes of the show. I've got Kyle in Olympia. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, thank you. I'm wondering if you guys have seen the movie The Invention of Lying?
No, but I want to.
Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mainstream atheist movie under the guise of a romantic comedy. For those who don't know what the movie's about, it's about a world where nobody can lie, and so everybody is infinitely gullible because, they have no concept of lying. So when Ricky Gervais comes along and he's able to lie, he comes up with religion, and of course it's super successful, and everybody believes it, and, it's the best thing ever. And of course the implication is religion is a lie.
I'm actually not a fan of the movie. I didn't think it was that funny. I didn't think it was that good. I thought it was a little ham-fisted in in the message it was trying to do. There were things about it that I liked and enjoyed, and there were a couple good bits, but it's not on my toppers list for for movies, atheist or otherwise. So.
Well, I think it's significant that such a movie would be in the mainstream media, especially in America when atheism is so downplayed so much of the time. But
I mean, you have direct attacks on religion in like Religious and other films like that, and The God Who Wasn't There. And granted, that's not nearly as mainstream. I do appreciate the fact that it's the themes were presented in a much more kind of mainstream way, but they're still kind of dumbed down, and there are problems there. I guess we're still at that stage where the best we can do is try to do the small
soft,
doses.
yeah.
Oh, look, we're kind of poking fun at religion here, which I guess it's progress.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Life of Brian was certainly a much firmer smack, and that was from 30 years ago. So.
And about 50,000 times better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I do find funny is that fundamentalist Christians in this country, and of course Ricky Gervais is Englishman, where it's a little bit more acceptable to.
And evidently he's a criminal.
Tweak. Oh, apparently yes.
Or at least there's an 80% chance that
he's in jail and he doesn't even know it. But fundamentalist Christians always whine and complain. Hollywood is so anti-Christian and immoral, and it's like. But look at, they are constantly. Hollywood has forever pandered to the Christian belief system. Whether some of the biggest Hollywood movies of all time, the Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, what have you, have been openly Christian. And whenever you have something coming out, Hollywood answers to one thing, and that's box office. So when The Passion of the Christ came out, the follow-up to that was studios were going around all over the place saying, hey, does any of your writers, they were calling agencies saying, do any of your people have anything Christian? Right? I mean, sure, if they know it'll make money, and if they don't, they're not motivated by any sort of political agenda. It's not the gang of liberal Jews out there to jab Christianity whenever they want. If Christian movies make money, they'll make those. If Christian movies don't make money, they won't make them. If an atheist movie came along and made $200 million, you'd see more atheist movies. So there's ultimately it's what people want to go see and promote with their dollar.
Yeah, good point. I agree with you. I have a specific question about the movie. So there's a scene in it where Ricky Gervais is at his mother's deathbed, and she's telling him how scared she is of this unknown afterlife, and she thinks it's just going to be an eternity of nothingness. And so that's, the point where he says, oh, I can lie so I can comfort her.
Yeah.
And tell her it's all going to be wonderful.
Yeah, and on that, I got to stop you because we're out of time.
Okay.
But sorry, as a reminder, we'll be back next week. Thanks, everybody. I don't know, you guys have a camera in your new booth?
No,
I guess not.
We don't, but
thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks, Martin.
Oh, sure,
we'll see you all again next week. And don't forget about Thread Gills after the show.
And this hour just flew. That's strange. Wow.